Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Deborah Eckerling, author of Your Goal Guide, a roadmap for setting, planning, and achieving your goals, and creator of the DEB Method, which is my system for goal setting simplified. I am a goal champion, goal strategist, corporate consultant. Basically, I believe anything you want to create, you can create if you have goals. And with that in mind, every Sunday night, I lead the Goal Chat Twitter chat. And then on Mondays, I bring in friends to dive deep into the topic. And then Thursday, it magically turns into an episode of the Deb Show podcast. So whether you're watching live or the replay or listening, we are glad you're here and choosing yourself and your goals. And I'm really excited. So today's topic is eat, drink, and do yoga, because I have a foodie and the founder of Drunk Yoga. So what else would I call this episode? It's going to be a great show. We have with us Rob Rosenthal, who I met in real life several years ago because he came out to LA for our 140 conference in 2016. So it's been a while and really good to see you, Rob. And Eli Walker, who I met through Alina Friedman's group for Fabulous Women. But that's not the only reason she's here. She came up in conversation like a week and a half ago. And I'm like, oh my goodness, Eli is perfect to talk. Okay, it wasn't called Drunk Yoga at the time of the episode, but this month it's all about the physical health, mental well-being, being your best self so you can face the world and do good, et cetera, et cetera. So thrilled to have you both here. I am going to let you introduce yourselves. And Rob, let's start with you. Will you please tell people, and I should have said Rob Rosenthal, AKA Short Order Dad. Will you please introduce yourself, say why you're here, and why food is so important in being healthy?
Well,
I know it's a lot of questions.
Well, no, it's fine. I was just thinking, where's the play? For me, I start at the beginning. I've had a love affair with food since I was born, and here I am a couple of years later, and
Right.
And food and drink has become my professional life as well. It wasn't always that way. I'm from New York. One might detect that in my New York accent. But I spent, I don't know, 25 years or so traveling internationally in the advertising business. And the best part of it was that I got to eat my way around the world, 4,000 restaurants on 6 continents. And then at night, I did stand up in New York City and went to professional culinary school. So that way, when I was able to extricate myself from the international advertising business, the food and drink part became my profession. Since I was responsible at home, both of us, my wife and I, both worked. So in the distribution of labor, I took on the food and the cooking because I like that, obviously. And so I made meals every day for my daughters growing up. And my wife at some point said, hey, you should really write a book. And then like a decade later, I wrote Short Order Dad, One Guy's Guide to Making Food Fun and Hassle Free. And then I travel still with the idea that I can write and report on food around the world, and I teach food out of the 92nd Street Y, which is a great cultural institution in Manhattan. And I do, like you, Jeb, I have a podcast every single week that runs on iHeartRadio and Spotify, and it's called All You Can Eat. That is the background to me. I'm glad to be here with you guys.
All you can eat. And is all you can eat really ever enough?
Well, in my case, I'm going to have to say it's too much. I literally, much as I like to eat and drink, someone once reminded me that even if I work out every day, I'm eating 3 times a day, and that battle over time, results in a little bit of extra poundage. So one has to be careful. I mean, food is delicious and it's also medicine, but yes, apparently you can't eat too much, and I'm a prime example of that.
Good to know. Thanks for the clarification. Eli, welcome. Great to see you.
Hi, you as well. Thanks for having me.
So please share who you are, what you do, what is drunk yoga, and why you're happy to be here, because I'm just assuming you're happy to be
Great questions. Again, I'm Eli Walker. I'm based in New York. I am the founder, CEO, and author of Drunk Yoga. Before I created Drunk Yoga, I always like to preface my background is in acting. So I went to NYU's Tisch School of the Arts for theater, where I developed an affinity for performance art. So experiential theater, really, all of the interactive performance art or community-based theater that you might see in more underground sort of black box theaters in New York City. And now it's sort of immersive theater is becoming more and more popular. So I have to explain what it is less and less. Um, and
here.
writing and
Awesome.
producing as well. And then, of course, in 2014, I became a yoga teacher, as many actresses do in New York. and and I loved everything about it. I approached it with great integrity and sincerity, and quickly earned my 500-hour teacher training in New York, and then started studying more and teaching across the globe in India and in Bali and in Thailand and in New York and LA as well. And I grew. And this relates to my philosophy about drunk yoga. So I was growing increasingly dissatisfied, Deb, with the convention of both acting and yoga, in that I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term the fourth wall, but the fourth wall in theater, okay, so it's the social contract that sort of separates the audience's story from the performers or the storyteller's story. So it's the social contract that we all just sort of agree to, that says Romeo and Juliet on the stage are in their world and we're in ours, and we're not going to go talk to them because that would be weird. Like, we're not going to just go up on the stage and have a conversation with them because they're in their world and we're in ours, and that's just the way it is. And we don't reach through it. And even as audience members, we don't connect horizontally as well. And I started to recognize similarities between that social contract and the way we treat yoga classes in the same sort of traditional, purist, I'll be bold and say patriarchal, because it is militaristic in nature, right? Like the guru or the teacher or the actor or the one who knows at the top of the room, telling everyone else who's facing them, like soldiers in a row, what to do and what to think and who to talk to and what to do with their bodies in the case of yoga, and not to ask any questions, just sort of receive, and not to talk to each other, right? And not to break that fourth wall, this way, teacher, student, or horizontally. And that's the same in a lot of audition settings and acting. And also, I mean, if you think about it, in traditional education, like universities, anywhere, or in a boardroom, and at a conference, when everyone's sort of facing one direction and just expected to receive, and that's sort of how we deliver information. And it's very linear, and I'll say it again, very militaristic and disciplinary, right? And so in the case of yoga, it can become a little dogmatic. And to make this a little less esoteric, I was just growing a little frustrated because my day job then as a yoga teacher was turning into more of just fitness instruction. Like, just I was expected to sort of go into these gyms and yoga studios and tell people what to do with their bodies and engage their glutes and engage their core, and which is a beautiful thing. I was just not. I was finding that I was more interested in teaching joy and belonging, and I felt like those are different shapes. Like the disciplinary version of fitness instruction felt more like a square and a line, and joy and belonging feels much more cyclical, spherical, circular, more inclusive to me, and it involves a lot more interactive storytelling. And I thought, all right, I just need to break down this fourth wall. Easy enough. But it wasn't that easy. It's really hard to break down the fourth wall of convention in conventional settings. So I tried to start sort of infuse regular yoga classes that I was teaching with jokes and games and play, and try to really engage with the students and encourage them to engage with one another, but they didn't want to. And I don't blame them, because in traditional settings, we go to a fitness class to get fit, or we go to a yoga class to just be introspective, which is great and beautiful, and we should have that. But I just realized I was never going to change the system from within. So I thought, how
You
can I
you
create?
now you've never been to a fitness class with me.
Okay.
And dance classes need to be interactive. So I'm totally with you on the get the joy and the excitement out there, right?
Yeah, and it just requires a bit more performance from the instructor themselves. I like to think of my drunk yoga teachers as sort of the MC of the entertainment experience that just so happens to be through the vehicle of a yoga class. And the wine in hand is really much more of just like a prop or a device to help people to elicit a feeling of socialization and celebration. And so I had set out to figure out a way to take yoga outside of the conventional setting so that it would feel more comfortable for participants to be social, engage, interact, feel like a party. So, other ingredients that I started to think about were music, callback songs, nostalgia songs well, my target demographic would really appreciate Britney Spears and NSYNC. Like 90s hits and like the songs that you might listen to in or might you think of like a middle school like dance or like what you listened to when you got your first car. And we all sort of share those memories. And of course, a beverage in hand. And while it sounds like it's always alcohol, it's in fact not. It's often coffee or juice or water or wine, whatever makes you happy, we say. And then I sort of developed this sort of performance, if you will, this interactive story that has 7 steps, a beginning, middle, and end. And I teach it to my instructors so that they can take our students on this interactive journey that involves 5 drinking games, 3 icebreaker questions, and a partner exercise while there's fun Beyonce music and we're doing yoga. So it kind of serves 2 purposes. It allows yoga to be more inclusive for seasoned yogis and more fun. And for yoga newbies, it lets them try to practice in a much more accessible way than they may otherwise feel comfortable doing in a conventional setting. So that's all of the sort of the intellectual background, Deb. What happened was I walked into a bar, like most great ideas begin, and it was a bar I used to work at in Lower Manhattan, and this was in 2017. And the owner of the bar said, "Oh my gosh, you're a yoga teacher. You should teach me yoga. I can't even touch my toes." And then, sure enough, he did. Touch
He
his
touched
toes.
his toes.
He
Okay,
bent
good.
over, touched his toes, and he said, "Oh, I guess I can do it when I'm drunk." And I said, "Let's do drunk yoga," sort of like flirtatiously because he was cute. And then I had a light bulb moment and I thought, actually, wait, this is it. Like, what better way to make yoga more fun and accessible and inclusive than by turning it into a bit of a party? And the company went viral very quickly. So I grew very quickly and expanded. And yeah, now it's sort of a nationwide party.
Nice. And I love that you're both in New York and I'm in LA. Usually there's a little bit more coastline balance, but I'm okay with that. So Rob, we were talking before we went on because you said you haven't yogaed before, but given your desire for your love of food and drink, this sounds like it would actually be like your thing.
Well, I've already engaged my glutes, and
Great.
I do like to fill up a glass, with wine or a martini prior to cooking. So I would say, yeah, if I'm going to do yoga, I'm intrigued by the idea of doing it after a cocktail, I suppose. I think it's a big idea.
Nice. Well, when I put these groups together, I kind of I suspect it's going to be a good conversation, but I never really get really how deep the similarities are until we start talking. And Rob, with what you do, making food fun, and you do like food performance art, right? Because you also do stand up. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
it is correct. What happened, Deb, was that I even though I was doing in my initial career advertising at night, I did stand up in the city, and then at night I went and got a professional culinary degree. So when I got out of that, I was able to combine those things. So to this day, people say, "Well, do you still do stand up?" And I don't go to comedy clubs to do stand up, but I'm on every week on something, either on the podcast or on or teaching classes, and that platform for me is an opportunity to I don't know if you would call it pure stand up, but to be as naturally entertaining as possible.
Nice. So there is a similarity. You're
Oh,
just
there's no question. And that similarity starts off with a cocktail, by the way. I can tell you that right now. Yeah, we have that working.
Excellent. So what I love to do is, so what are your best habits for being healthy? And it can include food and it can include yoga, or it can be something completely out of that box. So
Well,
what about you, Rob?
I could tell you for me, it's not terribly complicated because I've been working on it for most of my life. I like
Okay.
working out. I like working out. I mean, as often as possible, which means if it's not every day, it's maybe 6 days a week. And I like variety, and it's important, I guess, over time, not to, in my case, not to kill any particular body part. So I believe in kind of varying the training. So maybe one day it's aerobic on a bicycle or on a stair type of machine, and another day it's about weight resistance, so you can work your musculature, and another day it's going to be about something that's more stretching, perhaps yoga like or whatever it may be. So I think first and foremost, and I don't think this is a revelation to anybody. I happen to be lucky I get to do it a lot, but I think working out is crucial. But as I was saying earlier to you, no matter how much you're working out, at the end of the day, what really matters in terms of your own health and well-being is what you're putting in your body. And there's no surprise, because it almost sounds like a sage observation of the obvious, but predominantly, you're going to want to be eating as much fruits and vegetables as possible. Your carbohydrates are complex. Your proteins are lean. And there are certain things that are indisputably good for you in terms of fats, for example, avocado oil, olive oil. So, I don't think it takes brain surgery. It's more like it takes discipline. And I mentioned that in this context, just to put it all into perspective. You know, you only need really to take in 10 extra calories a day. Over the course of the year, you'll gain a pound. I'm literally like an extra grape a day will translate into 3,500, 3,600, calories. That's a pound. Well, you do that for 20 years. Next thing you know, you're looking at 20 pounds overweight. So I think it's not entertaining. It's not hilarious, but in answer to your question, it can't be all martinis and pizza. There's got to be some discipline, and it's got to be focused on eating. One has to be focused on eating, making better choices with food than not. Even though all the fun is in the food that's a little bit more the kind of food that goes well with martinis. You know what I'm saying?
But you're right. It is not brain surgery, but it's also more fun to just eat the fun stuff and to find that balance, right? So what about you, Eli? What is your regimen for healthiness?
Yeah, something I've been working really hard on since the pandemic is, we could call it balance. I try to think of like rituals or like habits. I historically just live in the extremes, as you do in New York, especially as an artist and in the health industry as a yoga teacher. That looks a lot like getting up at 4 a.m. to run all over the city to teach 6 a.m. private clients. And now I don't. Now I run the company, and now I left the city to go upstate in the Hudson Valley. So I've been working on for me, a healthy day just looks like did what I needed to do to get a good night's sleep. So I guess it's a little bit backwards. I sort of revolve my days around how am I going to get a good night's sleep, and then that looks like minimal caffeine. And I also work out every day. I find that if I don't, I just feel really emotionally frustrated and physically lethargic, like just for my mental health. It's important for me to work out at least once a day, like whether that's go for a hike or do like a fitness class. And yoga for me isn't exercise. Yoga for me is just like breakfast. Like I do yoga every day. It's just maintenance. And I meditate, and I don't meditate. I don't put too much pressure on it. I guess that's why I come back to this word balance. I think people, and a lot of students tell me too, that they don't want to start doing yoga because they feel like it's a whole lifestyle and it's a whole thing, and they just don't want to start this whole big project. Like you have to suddenly do it for 2 hours a day. 20 minutes is enough. I used to pressure myself to meditate for an hour a day. And now 5 minutes, if that's all I've got, 5 minutes is enough. My yoga teacher always says, you don't always have to make a cake. A cookie will do. If you have time to make a cake, awesome. Cake is awesome. But if you just want a cookie, if you only have 20 minutes to do a yoga practice, do 20 minutes. It's still good. It's still good to have a cookie, better than no cookie. And
I think that is my new favorite analogy. You don't always have to bake a cake. You could have a cookie.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, go on.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm still refining it. It's like a work in progress, figuring out sort of what time of day for all of these things work best. And the truth is, sometimes you just have to have compassion because days look different every day. Sometimes you have meetings throughout the day. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you feel like doing things at night, sometimes in the morning. So that's what I'm working on, is just finding the balance between getting everything I need to do in a day that makes me feel good, and exercise, a meditation, a yoga, a healthy food, no more caffeine beyond 12. Who am I surrounding myself with? Like just checking off all of the boxes that we know make us healthy, but in balance, and not pressuring myself to do it all at the same time every day, because rigidity has never worked for me. And having compassion around being a little bit flexible. It's a bit of a long-winded answer, but I guess what I'm working on right now is balance. And I will say that I have found the habits that work well. And something for me with alcohol and junk food and cake and cookies is I just no longer keep it in the house. That's been really beneficial for me too, health-wise, after COVID. I just only keep healthy food in the house, and water. And if I want to have something like and splurge, like a glass of wine with friends, or something, not traditionally healthy for me, I can do it, but I just have to leave the house. So it feels like a special treat, or I'll really have to work for it. So I'll really have to want it. But it's never in arm's reach. Those are some things I work on.
Well, that's smart. For me, it was always soda. And whenever I
Really?
worked in offices, when they had free soda, that was always like me at my worst health. And I keep the Verner's ginger ale because it's medicinal. It's for sore throats, but that's really the only soda I keep in my house for that. The exact reason, you need to want it, the splurges to get it. The other thing that you mentioned, which I think is important, is that balance. Everybody wants to know what the exact thing they need to do to be healthy. And the answer is only you know that answer. And I think that's when it gets a little tricky, is because people don't. I remember when I would lead, well, I still get this question on writers' panels: when's the best time to write? The answer is, when is the best time to write for you? I think that's, in terms of eating well and working out, is very much what you're saying, is know yourself. Thank you, LA, for the lovely horn honking in the background as we're speaking. So, Rob?
Yes.
What about you? How do you find your balance?
I have no balance.
Okay, good. Moving on.
No. Look, I treat my body either as a temple or a sewer. I have some difficulty with finding the middle, to be honest with you. But at some point, moderation is just not my thing. But at some point, at some point, and I'm at the point. So like right now, I mean, I can tell you this is working out well. I essentially stop having things like sugar and alcohol and gluten, and then I'm doing some version of intermittent fasting. So, and I'm not, again, there's only so long that's sustainable, because we all have lives. But I would say for me, the easier way is if I really do kind of get control for as long as possible, and then allow myself, as you guys are discussing, that on Friday or Saturday you're going to go out and you're going to have a little bit more fun and a little bit more interesting, social, and you're going to have a drink or whatever. So, but I would say at this point right now, I will fast for 16 hours, and then when I'm eating the lean. Like today is basically some sashimi, and maybe some salad and some chicken and some fruit. So that's how I play it. And again, that's not like long-term sustainable, but everybody, to your point, Deb, has to find whatever their best pattern is. So I mean, I love the idea of balance. I love the idea of moderation. It's not my specialty, so I find my own kind of workaround, if you will.
But a workaround is exactly what it is. You make it work for you, which is great.
That's the only way you can do it. I think if you start off with the recognition that you want to feel good, once you get to that point, you go, okay, what's gonna work for me? And I'm sure that I've tried every possible diet in the world, but I think you guys are smart enough to know that the greatest failure in human history is the idea that there's a diet, that somehow that you're going to lose weight and sustain that over time. That the failure rate is 90%, meaning that even if you lose, everybody can lose weight, but the point is only 10% of people actually factually data driven can lose weight and sustain that loss over time. So you have to basically get to a point where you go, what's my game? And the game is that you make lifestyle changes versus diet changes. So whether or not it means that you're going to be doing more yoga and more meditation and fewer pieces of fudge cake or fewer alcoholic drinks over the course of the week, then that's the game. But it's not about dieting. It's about finding your practice, if you will.
Definitely. Eli, anything you want to add on this?
Yeah, I agree with what Rob said, and that balance can look like a lot of different things to different people. And something that he made me think about is what I tell my students a lot is that use a measurement tool, right? It's build a structure that works for you, and don't always follow your feelings, because feelings are great for information, but they're not always right, because they change with new information. So to follow your feelings is never going to get you to the end of the map that you're trying to follow to reach a goal, to bring sort of back to goal setting. And when you follow your feelings, you're probably going to be led down a path that's not going to get you there. So build the structure, create the map, figure out what works for you, let your feelings be the information, and then, but then build the map. So that looks like intermittent fasting. That's, that's part of the structure. And then, but I'm sure sometimes Rob feels like eating earlier, but he doesn't, because, he built the structure and he's disciplined and sticking to it. So it made me think of that. Find balance, yes, but maybe think about the goal first to build the structure around that, and then don't follow your feelings. Trust the map that you've created for yourself.
This is exactly why I do what I do, is because Deb Method, it's all foundational. To get what you want, you need to know what that is. And it just as it can be for your career or your business, it can be for your life. So look at what you want to create and then make the steps and put the systems to create that. So yes, exactly. Perfect. Let's talk about food. I mean, why not, right? So what is your favorite way to eat healthy? I mean, I know, Rob, you do the intermittent fasting, but do you have a favorite healthy food?
Yeah, I mean, this may come as a surprise. Well, I mean, are gin martinis considered healthy? No, this may come as a surprise, but I don't. I think I generally feel that I eat healthy. I am less interested in desserts than most people. I like food, And breakfast to me is easy. I mean, there's oatmeal and there's yogurt and there's eggs. All fine, right? Lunch to me relatively easy, right? Because there's salads and even decent sandwiches if you're using whether it's turkey or vegetables or whatever. And I have no problem with dinner picking up some protein and a vegetable and some interesting starch, or even if I feel like I want to go clean, sometimes I'll just have some protein for dinner with two different vegetables and skip the potato piece. The problem I find for me is more like it's more like quantity. Do you know? I mean, I happen to I eat sometimes too much, and I'm not obviously in the minority here. We live in one of the fattest countries on earth. I mean, the numbers in America are staggering. I didn't know, Deb. I thought this was supposed to be funny, and nothing I'm saying is funny at all. But the fact is, you have obesity rates in this country that are humiliating. So, I don't, the idea of like what I eat that's healthy, like tonight, literally, it's tonight for me because I'm 3 hours ahead of you guys, and I have to stop eating at 8 o'clock sharp so that the next fast period starts. So I'm having, sushi and sashimi and I sauteed some mushrooms. So I feel really good about that. It's not what I'm eating. For me, the challenge is always going to be around the quantity of it, and so that's that's what I find. In America, by the way, part of the obesity problem is related to the overconsumption of sugar. Almost more than anything else, which is hidden in so many ingredients that people are not really familiar with, like ketchup and relish and that kind of thing. And also, there's way too much. You mentioned it before. There's way too much soda and juice, which essentially has zero nutritional value, but is loaded up with with sugar. And I think that, and even the fat. I mean, it's like fat is not an enemy if you're eating the right fat, like avocados, avocado oil, olive oil, fantastic. When you're eating fried, potato chips, you're killing yourself long term. And by the way, I love potato chips, and they go particularly well with with a martini. But again, that's the kind of stuff. These are the kind of choices that you need to make long term to sustain some semblance of what you guys would call a balance in your life. That's been my experience.
Before we move to Eli, I have to ask about salt, because salt is also hidden almost as much as sugar. Thoughts?
No. Well, look. I'm a professional cook,
Mm-hmm.
and if we're going to be honest, there's nothing that brings out the flavor in food like salt, and nothing else will ever replace that. Can you have too much salt? The answer is yes. Is your blood pressure too high? If the answer to that is yes, you're going to want to find other ways to minimize your salt intake. But it does not compare as a problem with respect to weight gain that sugar does. Sugar is empty calories that messes up your whole with your glycemic index. Sugar is going to make you fat. Salt is not going to make you fat. Overuse of salt is going to give you hypertension. That's a whole different ballgame. And Deb, if you ever need, I'm happy to tell you ways to substitute other things to bring great flavor to your food without overusing salt. But when it comes to fat and obesity, sugar is a big part of the problem. Is a not only big, probably the main part of the problem in this country.
Okay, great. Thank you. No, I appreciate the clarification, because I'm always careful about a little bit of everything, and I want to know about the flavor things, but let's talk to Eli about her favorite healthy foods, and then we could talk about flavor. So Eli,
Yeah.
what are your favorite healthy foods?
My favorite healthy foods. I actually don't eat meat, and I also don't eat gluten. I'll cheat on the gluten once in a while, and I'll cheat on dairy once in a while, and I'll cheat on sugar once in a while. But for the most part, I'm vegan, gluten free. I know there's a lot of controversial opinions about the vegan thing. It just makes me feel so good, and I always feel so energized and so so much better when I eat a vegan diet than when I had animal products. That said, when I do feel like I'm craving something like fish or eggs, I let myself have that because I figure I'm craving it for a reason. But it's not often, like maybe twice a year. Um, so veganism works for me. I eat a lot of vegetables and a lot of fruit. Love fruit. I know that's another controversial one because it has a lot of sugar, but my body feels so good when I have lots of fruit. And I avoid a lot of processed food. That said, I have a weak spot, and this is embarrassing, and I can't believe I'm saying this on the internet, you guys, but with like vegan, like chicken nuggets, like it was my go-to comfort food. It's just so bad because it's just processed soy, so much sodium, like vegan chicken nuggets. But that's for my happiness. And sometimes we gotta prioritize that too. Um, yeah, lots of water, lemon water in the morning. Something I do to help myself with the intermittent fasting is I load my coffee with like spices. So in the morning, I put cinnamon in my coffee and turmeric and a little bit of coconut oil. Um,
Right.
yeah, and like just a little tiny little bit of like almond milk, and then that kind of sustains me too. Um, those are the things that come to mind.
Yeah.
Ooh,
By the way, but just from my perspective, I went to French cooking school. I travel and write about food, so I eat it all. But I have there's no controversy in my mind when it comes to fruit. I mean, I don't care about the sugar aspect. If you're eating fruit, you can feel good about yourself, and it's the same thing with. I can't be necessarily a vegan. I don't even know that I could sustain vegetarianism. But I will say that there should be no controversy around that either. That's just like that's just totally healthy. Great, you know what I mean? I
yeah.
love the concept of meatless Mondays. You know what I mean? Where you can have a whole day devoted to eating, fruits and vegetables and whatever else it is that you like. It's just that every once in a while, I like a good hit of protein, but yeah, I don't. There's no controversy with me. If people are going to like, I would love to. I would love to be, vegan or vegetarian. In fact, Mark Bittman, who's a great food writer, wrote a book called VB6, and the concept
Mm,
of the book was just be vegan up till 6 p.m. at night, and
mm.
then maybe you're going to have a lean piece or whatever. So I know I think you should. I'm sure Eli feels in general very clean and lean and healthy from that kind of diet.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent. I've been vegan for a long time. I was vegetarian for even longer since I turned vegetarian. I was 14, and I don't really crave meat or
Right.
animal products. It's just never really a thing for me. So it was easy for me to make the transition to veganism. It's only hard socially. Like, it feels like every networking event has wine and cheese, and
Sure.
like every restaurant, it's so socially it's a little hard. But now more than ever, it's much easier because there's vegan alternatives for everything. I know processed food isn't great, so I do avoid the processed alternatives. But yeah, I feel great, and there's a lot of ways to be vegan healthy. Really, really healthy grains like
Sure.
quinoa and farro and beans, and there's a lot of great ways to get tofu and add seeds to everything. I think people underestimate the power behind seeds, just adding it a little bit
Yeah.
to everything. Good
Yeah.
grains, yeah, like steel cut oats in the morning, and then leafy greens throughout the day, and you're
Hey,
feeling good.
here's one for you, Eli. Well, two things. I was at a market last week in London, and there's a guy making vegetarian risotto, but
Mm,
rather than making it with he was it was all mushrooms, but he wasn't using like arborio. He wasn't using rice. I said, "What's the grain?" He said, "Spelt." And I tasted it. It was the
mm,
best thing. The market had hundreds of foods. The best thing I ate all day was his mushroom and spelt risotto. It just reminded
ah,
me of that when you talked about grains. And then the other thing I want to throw in here, because it's a revelation to me, I've been eating steel cut oats. McCann's from in that tin can from Ireland to me is just like fantastic.
yeah,
And people historically, I mean, people eat like instant, and the instant stuff is I mean, I suppose it's better than eating sugary cereal. But if you're going to have oatmeal, go all the way. You have it. the steel cut. The reason people don't appreciate it is because it takes 25, 30 minutes to make, which I mean, I would just put it on the stove before I got into the shower in the morning. But here's the revelation. Historically, when you have oatmeal in the morning, what do you put in it? You're gonna, if for people like Eli, she's gonna put in, for example, berries. For people like me, I'm going, let me get some brown sugar in this thing, or some honey and whatever. But then I discovered, speaking of grains, I discovered the concept of savory oatmeal. And it's totally changed. I haven't had anything sweet in my oatmeal for the last year. So what I do, in the same way that Eli will put spices in her coffee, I take that McCann's Irish steel cut oatmeal, 25, 30 minutes to make on a low simmer. Give it a little shot of olive oil, and then I put in my favorite spices, whatever those may be. It could be cayenne to make it spicy. It could be oregano if you want to make it that flavor. It could be chili. The Chinese have a condiment that's kind of like a spicy. The point is, it doesn't matter. Whatever your favorite spice profile is goes into the oatmeal, and frankly, it's and a little salt. Don't forget that one, Deborah, because it's not going to have any taste, really, that much taste. So you do that, and then here's the thing. Again, not for vegans, but for people who want to like amplify that oatmeal. To me, as great as it is, but nothing would stop you from putting a runny egg on top of it. Or, for example, again, if you weren't vegan, maybe topping it with a little bit of a little sprinkle of grated, Parmesan Reggiano. So I'm just so the revelation to me simply was converting oatmeal from a sweet breakfast into a savory one. That's all.
Yeah. Oh, I could talk about oats all day long, Rob. So here's one for you. Or for anyone who doesn't want to cook the oats in the morning,
Right.
a version of overnight oats that I love and do often. You just put it in the blender so you have it ready. Steel cut oats, and just soak it, just soaking in water. So by the morning it's like nice and filled. And then almond milk, nutmeg, cinnamon, dates, banana, and apple. Blend it
Awesome.
up. You're good to go. You can eat it with a spoon or drink it.
Yeah, the thought of that makes me hungry. That's a great recipe.
I'm so hungry now after this conversation.
You're welcome.
That's a great recipe. And the genius of it, by the way, aside from the flavor, is that you don't have to be adding in honey. You don't have to be adding in sugar. You don't have to be adding in any kind of like a maple syrup. The dates become, and they're super high fiber. The dates become your sweetness. And that's just fantastic. I love that.
Yeah, do like 3. So it's like 1 apple, 1 banana, 3 dates, and then like a serving of like your oats. And then fill up the rest with whatever almond milk you want, or whatever kind of milk you like. And I don't add sweetness to my oats either, even when I cook them. So I do add berries. So good call there, Rob. I do add berries, and I do goji berries. So I like to do dried fruit. I like raisins and goji berries, and then walnuts, and then just a little bit of almond milk.
There's a great platform for your nuts or your seeds.
Yeah, I always do flax seeds, and then I really pile it on because I just try to get as much nutrition in the morning as I can. So I'll do on my oats, like I can do chia seeds or hemp seeds, pumpkin seeds, a lot of flax, and then berries, maybe apple, and then always cinnamon. And so there's no added sugar there.
And the beauty of oats also, I don't know how we got this into a conversation about oats, but the beauty of oatmeal, the real oatmeal, we're talking about the steel cut oats, is that, man, you're full for a long time. I mean, that'll sustain you for 4 or 5 hours. I use that in the morning if I know I'm going to have a heavy duty workout in the middle of the day, because that's a lot of energy in that food.
Yeah, and there's so much iron, so it's great for women.
And by the way, throw in a tablespoon or 2 of almond butter.
Yeah, I play that game sometimes, or like pumpkin butter. I'm big on the pumpkin these days. Like there's the pumpkin everything, pumpkin butter. They've even have they call it pomfu. I don't know if you know about this, Rob, but it's like tofu except made out of pumpkin seeds. So they call it pomfu.
Oh, I would try that.
Yeah, it's super good. And so you don't get the soy, but you still get a great meat alternative. It's great like when you grill it, if you grill it with like soy sauce. Yeah.
You're calling it pofu? Is it
They call
pofu?
it pomfu, like
Oh, pomfu.
POMFU.
Where are you finding it? In like a natural, like a health food store, or
Yeah,
like Whole Foods?
like in bougie health food stores. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. And lots of protein in steel cut oats too. That's the last thing I'll say about steel cut oats. So for anyone who's like, well, I can't be vegan because I need protein, oats.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question. So, and I live by cream of wheat. That is like my breakfast of champions because I cannot overdo on the vegetables because my body gets mad at me. What alternatives do you have for that?
For cream of wheat or for vegetables?
Oh, for vegetables. I mean, what are ways for people who cannot eat raw vegetables? It makes me sad to still get all that yumminess.
Well, you can steam them. You don't have to eat raw. You could steam, or you won't get as much nutrients, but I just find heating up the vegetables does wonders. And then there's a lot of ways that you can get nutrients through herbs that I don't think people realize. Like even teas, like Tulsi tea, adding herbs to a lot of dishes. It's not the same thing, but there's nutrients in herbs that I don't think people realize.
And Rob, you promised me flavor. You did.
Yes. Although the internet was a little slow, what's the whole question? Flavor as far as what goes?
Well, you were going to give me flavor alternatives to salt, but the other question I had, because I can't eat raw vegetables, which makes me sad because I love them, what can I do that makes my body happy because I still need to eat them in some form? That was a long question. Just do the
great.
flavor thing.
No. It's the rightest question, and it's easy for me. You can eat vegetables if they're not raw. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yes.
So you're gonna. So the two greatest methods for cooking vegetables are roasting and sautéing, right? So you know that any vegetable that you can think of, from mushroom to broccoli to cauliflower to string beans, just name it. Almost any vegetable in the world with olive oil. And let's argue that there's a little bit of salt or not, and there's some black pepper, goes in the oven and it cooks for longer than you think that it should. And you look at it and it's starting to get brown, otherwise known as caramelized. And you go, so that's one way. That's like easy. So roasting. Your other alternative is the saute. So going on top of the stove in a fry pan or a saute pan. I do string beans all the time. I did mushrooms tonight. And again, flavoring is olive oil, a little bit of garlic, unless you prefer other aromatic vegetables you could certainly use. And if you want to minimize the salt intake, Deb, as well as anybody, that you can go into the supermarket and find those salt substitutes. I don't use them. I think that you can do well with acidity, which is to say that always fresh squeezed lemon juice, the zest of a lemon, a lot of flavor. Eli and I were talking about the use of seeds. So sesame seeds, toasted or white or whatever, with your vegetables is good. Here's another trick: take balsamic vinegar, the cheap kind, right? Put it into a saucepan and reduce it until it's like 1/4 of where you started, so it's like thick and glazy. And put in your favorite herb if you want, like a stick of like a branch of rosemary or a couple of leaves of tarragon, and reduce it down to a glaze. That way, when you have roasted your string beans or sauteed them or your vegetables with maybe some almonds, you can just drop a little bit of olive oil or a little bit of balsamic glaze on top of it as well. So, so citrus, seeds, garlic, olive oil, roasting. These are all I could easily be a vegetarian, at least for a few days, because I think that you can always max the flavor on veg if you cook them versus having them raw. Even if you steam your vegetables and you top them with nothing other then good quality olive oil and a splash of lemon juice and a little pinch of sea salt, kosher salt, fleur de sel, something that has a little texture to it. You don't need a lot of salt when you're using the finishing salts, like the Malden sea salt, because the flakes are bigger. You don't use as much. So even recipes that ask you to use salt, if you're using table salt, and a recipe says you need a tablespoon of table salt, that actually converts to a teaspoon and a half of like kosher salt because of the volume of the salt. So anyway, those are some of the things that I would do if I wanted to max veg without having them raw.
Okay, now I'm hungry. Okay, I've been hungry the entire conversation because, food. This has been great and so helpful. And yes, we did, I think, 10 minutes on oatmeal and 5 minutes on veg. And I'm totally fine with that and very appreciative of your time. I don't want to miss out on giving people goals for a healthier lifestyle. So I would love for you each to gift a goal to our audience, something that they can do today to just feel healthier, be healthier. Eli, do you have a goal you would like to gift?
Yeah, I think I'm going to double down on my cake cookie metaphor from earlier of just if you're in the camp of feeling like you're hesitant to work out or try something like yoga because you feel like you don't have the time to commit to an hour a day, do it for 10 minutes or just breathe consciously for 10 minutes. Like just commit to 10 or 15 minutes. Like pick a time frame that works for you and then do that. And don't overcommit and don't undercommit. Like find that sweet spot. If it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, do that. So you leave, feeling ahead. So maybe set the goal to be less time, more quantity. So maybe for the rest of this week, it's Monday. So for the rest of this week, my goal gift to you is, let's call it 15 minutes of yoga or breathing or meditation. So nothing crazy, 15 minutes a day, and just see how you feel.
I love it for lots of reasons, but the main one being that's part of what I teach. It's like, don't bite off an hour of work on your passion project when you only have 15 minutes. So to look at your life, look at your schedule, and then just pick and do in small increments. So not only do I love and endorse what you said, it's something that frequently comes out of my mouth, but usually not with exercise. So yay, perfect. Thank you, Eli. Rob, what goal would you like to gift?
Well, this is strange for me because I'm going to say something that I've never actually said before, but it feels relevant to the conversation that we're having, which is that sleep is super important, and obviously eating, but the two should be separated. So I think the goal is going to be like this. Don't put a thing in your mouth other than maybe a sip of water or a toothbrush for at least 3 hours before you go to bed.
Really? Is that the magic number?
Well, I imagine that there may be yes is the short answer. I think that you have to give your body at least 3 hours. You know the hardest thing that your body has to do. This is surprises some people. The process of digestion is the most work that your body really ever has to do. And if you're having meat and steak at 9 o'clock, you'll notice right about 1 or 2 in the morning when you wake up that you're waking up. You're waking up. Your body is just like your body's on overdrive at this point. And so I guess, and like I said, this is unusual for me, and I'm not a doctor. Don't take it if you don't want to. But I did learn recently that you want to give yourself at least 3 hours of not putting a thing in your mouth before you're ready to go to bed. You'll end up with a healthier sleep.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that. I think I'll try it. I always mean to not eat before I go to bed, and sometimes I forget. Or I stop eating like too long before bed. And then now I know that 3 is the magic number. I'm gonna try. That's what you're gonna get from me on this one. And I love the 15-minute workouts because I'm a huge fan of the dance breaks that are usually more like 3 to 5 minutes, but I'm gonna try and increase that. But really good, manageable tips, goals for living a healthier life. Now, I'm going to let you all give a final tip, so start thinking about that. But please first tell me, where can people find you, Rob? Where is the best location?
I would say there's a couple. Everything that every contact point for me is on my website. That's going to be realrobrosenthal.com. So even though there's a whole lot of other stuff on there, like videos and recommendations that I make about products and places and things that I think are worth recommending. Also, all of my social networks are indicated on there as well. Link to the podcast is up there as well. Link to my book is there as well. So I would say the easiest way is to get to realrobrosenthal.com. And then, like if you're a Twitter person, you can find my Twitter handle there. If you're a LinkedIn person, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. That's the easiest way.
Excellent. And Eli, where can people find you?
You can check me out at eliwalkerstories.com. And if you want to learn more just about drunk yoga, it's dodrunkyoga.com. But you can find both at eliwalkerstories.com would be great. And a final tip, is that what you need, Deb?
Not yet. In a second.
Okay.
Keep thinking. All I was going to add is that these links and other fun tidbits mentioned, and definitely there will be oatmeal in the recap. You can go to thedebmethod.com/blog for the recap from this and the previous episodes. And I am at the Deb Method everywhere for your tips and your motivation about figuring out what you want and how to get it. Now, yes, please, Eli, what is your final tip?
Well, what I was thinking about was, in the spirit of breaking down the fourth wall and making wellness fun, like we do at Drunk Yoga, my tip would be to find ways to engage playfulness in everything you do. So if you feel like you're getting bogged down with seriousness or anything just too heavy, don't underestimate the power of even just a little bit of play. If the song Mambo Number 5 or doing the Macarena, like in between, or while you're cooking dinner or something like that, or texting someone a funny joke. Like, don't underestimate the power of playfulness in small increments throughout your day to not only elevate your mood, but shift your perspective so that you start sort of creating different stories for yourself that bleed out into the other experiences of your life.
That's fantastic. Great tip. Love it. And it's when you feel good, everything else is going to be easier too.
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Okay, so Rob, what is your final tip?
Well, I'm gonna go with playfulness as well, but my playfulness happens in the kitchen. I think people should cook more. And part of that is because I find it, creative, and I find it fun. And to your point, I think it's always more healthy when you are the one deciding what goes into your food, and so cook more. Now you have to know, and I know that this will sound somewhat self-serving, but I literally wrote a book on the subject, how to get the most taste with the fewest ingredients and the least effort. So that's the book, and I teach classes at New York's 92nd Street. Here, I'm going to actually send you a link so that you have it. Next week's class, I'm teaching people how to do seafood, fish, and seafood. So again, the kind of stuff that's relatively clean in the spectrum of what you can eat. And so my tip is to cook more and certainly have fun doing it, which circles back to how we started this evening. Which before you get drunk and do yoga, pour yourself a glass of wine and make some dinner. All those activities go well together, as far as I'm concerned.
They absolutely do. Thank you so much, Rob Rosenthal and Eli Walker, for a wonderful conversation about food, drink, yoga, being healthy, and oatmeal. Again, if you're watching or listening, thank you so much for tuning in today. And be sure to go to thedebmethod.com/blog to learn more from these wonderful experts, get their links. And if you need a little extra kick, you can go to thedebmethod.com/goals and learn more about how I can help you figure out what you want and how to get it. Okay, go forth, be healthy.